Gray, a features reporter for the Inquirer. Thank you for joining us on Inquirer Live, where our guests today are Concrete Cowboy director Ricky Staub and Ivannah-Mercedes, one of the Philadelphia writers who appear in the film alongside Idris Elba and Caleb McLaughlin. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. At any time during the discussion, you may submit questions for our guests. Please ask your questions on the comment section at the bottom of this page. If you're watching us on social platforms like Facebook or Twitter, please join us at inquirer.com/Concrete Cowboy to submit any questions. We'll take as many as we can as time allows at the end. Since its premiere last Friday, Concrete Cowboy, which was filmed in Philadelphia, has consistently ranked in Netflix's top 10 for the US. Critics have praised both its cinematography and its portrait of Philly's Black cowboy culture. Viewers moved by the plight of the Fletcher Street riders have opened their wallets for GoFundMe campaigns that are aimed at keeping that culture alive here. I'm happy to welcome Ricky Staub and Ivannah-Mercedes to Inquirer Live.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having us.
Well, Ricky, this is your first feature film, and it stars Idris Elba, as well as Ivannah-Mercedes, of course. Can you talk a bit about how the whole project came about?
Yeah, I mean, from the inception, in 2017, I would mark when it really began. I guess to frame it, I have a production company in Philadelphia, neighborhood film company, and I launched that in 2011 so that I could hire adults returning home from incarceration to work full-time in the company. So in 2017, I was speaking in court, as I do every year, offering our apprenticeship, as it's called, to candidates there. And one of the gentlemen speaking that day had just come home about a week from prison, and his name was Eric Miller, and he was telling the judge that he had already purchased a horse, which I found really crazy to hear in court. You don't hear that every time I'm there. But we struck up a friendship, which then led to us, me learning more about the Black cowboy community in Philadelphia. And it was really him that shared with me what was happening really around the city of Philadelphia with a lot of stables that had been shut down over the years. And then Fletcher Street specifically was already in 2017. He was well aware that they were going to lose their land. And so he was hoping to be able to put together a story that could help really wake up the city to how beautiful this culture is in this community. And so, that began a couple-year journey with him really inviting me into his life. And then, that's when I met Mill and kind of the rest is history, so to speak. Here we are now.
Well, what was it like when you found out that Idris Elba was interested in this project? I mean, what was like getting that phone call?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, to frame it too, previous to, when I first met Eric, Idris Elba didn't know who I was. None of that was on the table. The whole goal at that point was I was going to actually make the film with just the entire community at large, much like I did with my short film. But obviously, when Idris Elba wants to be in your movie, you make an accommodation for him. But it was really cool. I was actually pretty nervous about the call. One, just, talking to a celebrity of that status as a filmmaker is an extraordinary moment. And at that point, he hadn't necessarily attached to the film. He was just really interested to learn more. And so we spent about an hour and a half on the call. And I thought it was going to maybe be something that wasn't appealing to him, but I told him, I was like, by and large, I really want this film to be made with the community actually in front of the camera in most of the roles possible. How does that feel for you? And he was actually really taken by that idea, which surprised me. I thought it was going to be scary for someone of his caliber to trust working alongside non-actors, but I believed in my heart that was the best way to make the film. So I just wanted to kind of set the table, even with Idris Elba, to make sure we were aligned. But he totally bought into it and loved it. And it was actually on that phone call that it completely changed, where he said, I want to not only star in it, I want to produce this too. I want to really get behind it. So yeah, it's probably one of the biggest moments in my life as a filmmaker.
Well, Mercedes, what was it like for you to find out you would be working with Idris Elba and Caleb McLaughlin?
Honestly, it was just kind of crazy and surreal. I'll never forget. I was standing at a bus stop in Huntington in front of Holy Redeemer Hospital, and when I got the final call, like after all of the auditions, like even when I got the first call back, I was just like, "Are you serious? Like, really?" And it was like, "Oh my goodness!" I'm like going further through this process. Like as the auditions kept happening, it was just like, okay, like this might actually happen. Like, oh my goodness. And then I just remember jumping up and down, like I almost lost my breath. I was just like, oh, I can't believe it. Like total typical, yes, super reaction.
Well, there's a running joke among actors that when a casting director asks if you can ride a horse, you say, of course I can ride a horse, even if you've never been anywhere near a horse. Obviously, you'd been near horses, but had you ever acted before?
I had not. And it was, it's something that I've always wanted to do. After the premiere, I talked to my grandfather and he's like, totally not surprised. You've technically been acting since you were 2, running around. And so my family's not surprised, but it's something that I kind of never really thought I could do. It was always like, I think I can. I want to, I'm you know what? I'm going to go for it. Let's go. And it was amazing. Like it's thoroughly something I enjoyed, not just, working with the actors, but getting to convey the story and be a part of that, sharing that with the rest of the world and helping them to see what it is that is here in Philadelphia. Like that's the best part of it for me. Like, yes, meeting Idris and Miss Lorraine, Meth, everybody, Caleb. I mean, I still talk to all of them. Byron is just hilarious. Like, and they were all amazing. But for me, that's definitely, it was just to be able to tell this story as someone who considered acting but never full on did it, and to do it in such company, it's just like, yes.
Well, Ricky, I mean, obviously you did succeed in getting the community in front of the camera. It really feels very seamless. So how did you find Mercedes, for instance?
Yeah, I love this story, actually. I feel like it's one of my hardest fought casting decisions. I have to give credit to our producers, especially Lee Daniels. They never really wavered, or they never wavered in trusting me to do this, to go this direction with the whole community members. There's obviously some anxiety around, can you pull off, it's one thing if you're like, I want to put one person in that's a real person, let alone, half the speaking roles, there's like 10 of them are community members. So, but I firmly believed that decision was going to change the whole film. Like there's a version where community's just behind the camera, but I actually believe that the strength was in the real community. And then, with this role with Isha, it was, you're playing opposite Caleb McLaughlin, who's like, the world's heartthrob from Stranger Things. There was a lot of trepidation of like, who's this girl that's going to be able to hold her own against Caleb? And I'm like, I saw so many auditions, like hundreds, amazing actresses, but I just felt like I want to believe that Caleb belongs in this world. Like I wanted to solve his Stranger Thingsness. I even said that to Idris, like, I'm afraid that you're going to be the sore thumb that sticks out because you're Idris Elba. And so I really believed that, like, to connect with Cole as the character, we needed a real cowgirl from the community who, was breathed out of this place. And so I think it was like 3 days before we were supposed to start shooting, and I had not made a decision on who to cast. And there was a young actress that was amazing from LA, but I just kept being like, it's just going to feel like contrived, like this contrived pairing, even though she was a wonderful actress. And then literally, I think it was Erin Brown, who, she's the executive director of the nonprofit that they started. And she texted me this video. I remember exactly where I was sitting in the hotel, and I was like at my wit's end, like I have to make a decision. And then I watched this video of Mercedes and some guy, I don't even know who it was. You were like in a closet.
Yes.
There was just like this, like, it was a weird reaction I had to it, where I'm like, there's something about her performance here that feels right to me. It was really rough, and it was like filmed on a phone. But anyway, I brought her in, she read, and then I'm really into improv, so I don't take our script like literal. It's more like base to build from. So in the audition, I just let her do her thing, and I was like hooked. I'm like, she's amazing. But then the producer's like, no, she's got to do it word for word because we got to know that she can like hit her mark and do her lines and all that stuff. So I was like, okay. I remember calling her. I was like, you got to just do it word for word so we can compare apples to apples. And she came in. It was even better the next time. I remember just being like, guys, don't stop wasting my time. Like, this is her. So yeah, I remember sending her audition to the producers, and Lee was the first one who was like all caps, oh my gosh, I'm in love. And I'm like, thank you. So I'm really excited because now the rest of the world can be in love with her. Like, I think it was one of the best casting decisions ever. And then I feel like she just got better as we kept shooting, like the more comfortable we got.
Well, and they talk about me, like hitting your mark. Did you even know what that was?
I mean, I did try to do a little bit of research on the lingo and everything, just to, so that I can go in there and make a fool of myself. But I have to say that all of the actors, they were just so supportive, and they were just right there every scene, no matter who I had a scene with. They made sure I was comfortable. They made sure that, I was gaining knowledge, and they were encouraging me. It was just literally the best experience of my life, and it solidified my career for the rest of my life.
That's really cool. I mean, were you also making them comfortable because you're so comfortable around horses and they might not have been quite as comfortable?
Definitely. So in the scene in the beginning of the film where Idris and I are in the middle of the field together, that scene, he's basically giving me a riding lesson. And so clearly Idris is allergic to horses. So he's never had a riding lesson. He's never taught a riding lesson. And, he was just like, hey, make sure I'm saying the right thing. If I say something that sounds like it doesn't belong, tell me. Or tell me, shout something I should be saying. And so he was very into the authenticity of being a riding instructor and just making sure that he did come off as part of our community. So,
I think that the idea that he took this knowing that he was allergic to horses.
Yes.
He must have really
Caleb
loved
is as well, actually. Caleb is also
allergic. They're both allergic to horses.
I didn't know that people were allergic to horses until,
Yes, believe it or not, my mother's allergic to horses and has suffered through it my entire life.
Well, you learned when was the first time you were on a horse in Philly? It was in Philly, right? So
actually, the first picture I have on a horse ever is in Delaware at my uncle's ranch, and I was about 6 months old. So he's actually one of the founding member or original Black Cowboys of Philadelphia. So he is the reason that my family is into horses. And so that is the first time I rode a horse. The first time I rode here in Philadelphia was at Cinematography Stables at a program called Work to Ride.
I remember.
So, that's where I started my official training here in Philadelphia.
How old were you? Do you remember?
8.
8?
Yep.
What's the first thing they teach you?
Oh man, that really just depends on where you go, and depends on who you're with. But mainly the first thing they teach you is how to fall off, believe it or not.
No, I think that's a good thing.
Know how to fall off because it is just a realistic thing that you're probably going to fall off.
I have fallen off, and it's more realistic than my actually staying on.
Yeah.
What surprised you most about making movies?
How long it takes. Those days were incredibly long shooting, and then how much post-production is involved in getting a final product. The behind the scenes guys, the crew, they did so much after we wrapped where we were all at home and just relaxing, and they were still working, cutting, editing, sound. It was an amazing experience. And I don't think that it's done the same way Ricky did it in all of Hollywood. I will say that I was given that piece of knowledge in advance. Don't expect it to be this way all the time. Ricky's set was different from what I'm told, but I can't imagine a better set to have been immersed into this culture with, or a better director to have done it with. Well,
Ricky, you've been on big film shoots. Aren't they even slower?
Yes.
You were
I remember one of the first days of shooting was with Jarrell. It's the scene in the tunnel with Jarrell and Caleb. And we were setting up and they're like, how much time are we going to have in between setups? I was like, 5 seconds. I was like, we got to go. Like, we got to move. Because he's saying on Stranger Things, it's like 45 minutes in between each camera setup. But I was like, yeah, this ain't that. This ain't that show. I'm sorry. This is going to be more like a play here. We're just going to run it a few times and move on. Because, yeah, it was low budget and we didn't have time. But I also prefer to work that way. I think there are things that are traditional to filmmaking that I think actually inhibit performances. So finally being in a position as a director, I could just remove those things. One of those being like, I was never concerned whether she knew what her mark was because I was telling my team that we're shooting this like a documentary. So they go over there, they do this, you adjust. Because their performance and their comfortability and their world is the most important piece of this. Yeah. And we're not going to get in the way of where tape is on the ground and this or that. I'm sure there were moments where that was important, but by and large, I wanted the performance to be like the premier thing we were focusing on.
Well, Lee Daniels, who obviously knows from Philly, says Concrete Cowboy is one of the most beautiful films ever made here. And obviously other people have talked about the cinematography. I've always liked watching directors work because honestly, so much of what you guys do is a mystery to me. Like when I talk to writers, I kind of understand what they're doing, but the directing part is fascinating. And I mean, can you talk about some of what went into some of those shots that people have been so enthusiastic about?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few things. I mean, first of all, a ton of credit needs to go to my cinematographer, Minka Farthing-Cole, who I think his ceiling is limitless. He will for sure one day win an Oscar. I think his work is beautiful. And so I'm glad that the film is being revered for its cinematography. But we talk a lot about the look of the film, and I actually cater to that as well as the performances. So, for instance, there were some scenes. Well, I guess backing up in the prep is really where we get a lot of that picture, like from lens choice to where's the light going to be at certain times of day to even the references from the community. I mean, for the years leading up, I was constantly gathering photography from the community. And one thing that kept burning into my image is a lot of the legacy and spirit of the film we were trying to capture was not just like this moment in time, but to make a film that kind of represented the spirit of Fletcher Street. So a lot of what spoke to me were these photographs from like the 80s and 90s that were printed, and there was like this hot yellow tinge to them, or they were faded, or they weren't perfectly clear. And so we wanted the film to feel that like an old photograph, almost nostalgic out the gate. So, we used old lenses. And then there was stuff, with Eric and Mel, who are my closest collaborators from the community. We wanted there to be certain tropes that are common to Westerns. So thinking about like, what are some fun shots that we can include that feel reminiscent of the Westerns they had growing up. So yeah, a lot. Is that
like like sitting around a fire or kind of sense?
Like, yeah, you sit around the fire and shit talk, and there's stories are told, or I love that it made the trailer. Like literally, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is near the end when they're on the bus and the horses ride by, and there's just so much said in it. But I was like, it's like that scene in a Western where you're on the train and you see the horses go by, but we're melding with our story where we know they're about to lose their home, and here's this young boy, a young black boy specifically, seeing this. And it's like, I wanted people to feel like the majesty of like these kids, this is how they experience these cowboys, but also knowing that it's going to be lost if something doesn't change, So that was kind of like how we came up with all these shots,
Well, Mercedes, there's a part of the film where they're talking about the whitewashing of history, the black cowboys being eliminated. Were you brought up knowing those stories?
I was. Fortunately for me, like I said, this is part of my family. This is a tradition that has been passed down to me. So I've actually already started telling my nephews the stories, and they've started riding. The Bill Pickett Invitational Rodeo is something that we do as a family every year. So, that's a traveling black rodeo where there's all black cowboys and cowgirls. The entire rodeo, the entire stadium is just black cowboys and cowgirls. So
Does that come here, or do you go somewhere else?
Maryland,
Oh,
is where we drive down to see it.
So has your family seen the film by now?
They've seen it. Like my nephew, I did not even want him to watch it because I'm like, he's too young, but he's like, no, I go to the stable. Why can't I watch it? Okay, fine. So he's watched it like 3 times. Like my brother's watched it 4 times. Like my mom is just everybody. My grandparents, everyone loves it. And even I've watched it a few times, still like, wincing at myself, like, oh, there I am. But like, I love the story. I really genuinely love the film. I do. If I wasn't in it, I would still watch it 5 times. Like I'd probably watch it more because it wouldn't be so weird to see myself.
Well, as much as we can tell about anything on Netflix, it seems to be a huge hit. What kind of opportunities are coming to both of you because of this?
Go ahead, Mercedes.
Well, I've gotten like a lot of interviews lately. I've been doing like lots of interviews, and I've gotten a few offers to do some podcasts and things like that. And I've been, throwing around like working with manager and things like that to advance my career. So that question has been asked to me a lot. Like, am I going to continue with acting? So I am happy to say that, yes, I am going to continue acting.
Good.
Yes.
Good. And Ricky?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's opened up a lot of wonderful opportunities. I mean, right out of Toronto, the director of the John Wick franchise saw the film, and we got an email, very glowing review of the film, and wanted to bring us in, and we got to write on a draft of John Wick 4, which was crazy. And it's definitely opened up a lot of other writing opportunities, which is like the thing me and Dan, my writing partner, love the most. We already have another project in the works with Tucker and Lee and Greg Renker, who financed Concrete Cowboy. So we have that's an original story that we wrote. So it's cool just to see. And after this weekend, we've had a lot more opportunities come our way. So it's really exciting that, I just think of the whole journey for 4 years, even as we started to pitch, people telling me that, a black cowboy story in the niche of Philadelphia isn't going to reach a global audience. And I just never believed it to be true. And I'm just so thankful that, Idris believed it could be true, and that Lee and Tucker and Greg believed it could be true, because like we just got off a call with Netflix and they're like, you guys, like around the world, people are embracing this film and you should be so proud of yourselves. And I'm like, it's awesome. Mercedes and I were just talking about all these messages she's getting from Brazil and South Africa.
Really?
It's amazing.
That is, that is something we forget about Netflix, is that it's everywhere.
Yeah, and the film is in 190 countries and 32 languages. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yes, and if you had released it in theaters, it might never have made it to most of those places.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really special thing for this story specifically, too, that it's such a large audience.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, many viewers have been moved, probably from around the world, to contribute to more than one GoFundMe campaign. There is one for the Fletcher Street Urban Riding Club, which I think, because you Google Fletcher Street, they're doing very well. But also you have one that you guys set up, and it has a slightly different goal. You want to talk about the Philadelphia Urban Riding Academy?
I will, actually. So yes, there has been a little bit of confusion because, like you said, when you Google, that's probably what causes most of the confusion. But there is a separation between the Fletcher Street Urban Riding Club and the program that which is myself and a few of the other riders of the Fletcher Street community, have started. So the stables themselves are made up of 3 different barns, and there's like 20 to 30 different cowboys in there. So a few of us have come together and decided that, we want to have a permanent place for all cowboys and cowgirls. So basically Fletcher Street has kind of become like a melting pot, where the stables of Philadelphia have begun to shut down due to gentrification, and everyone kind of like ends up at Fletcher Street, basically. So Eric Miller, who Ricky mentioned earlier, was kind of like the driving force behind Pure, to be quite honest. This was like his idea. Him and his trainer and a friend, Aaron Brown, who's also a friend of mine, they really just wanted to make sure that the gentrification that happened to him, Eric came from a barn at 9th Street that we had here in Philadelphia that has since been closed because of the gentrification that it wasn't able to stop. He decided that he did not want to ever see that happen again. And because Fletcher Street has been fighting for so long to just be there, to be quite honest, like they've gone through so much just to be able to love and take care of their horses, he wanted to make sure that did not happen ever again in this city. And so that is what Pura is. Pura is the Philadelphia Urban Riding Academy. And it is dedicated to Eric and because of Eric. And what it really is going to make sure that the traditions that we have as Black cowboys and cowboys here in Philadelphia never die. They never are stomped out by gentrification or someone who just doesn't understand or any other reason. They'll be there forever. And it's not just, for Black cowboys and cowgirls. Everyone is welcome. We don't discriminate against anyone in any way, shape, or form at Pura. Everyone is always welcome. But the reason that we started the program, the core of who we are is an organization of a community of Black riders who don't want our community to die. Yeah. And everything that we're going to offer is going to be free of charge for kids, after school programs, riding lessons, that is what we're about. We're about the community. And the guys that you see walking down the street and you might see riding in the park, they don't all belong to a club. They don't, necessarily, have that title, but they do belong to our community. They belong to you. That's why they stop and let your kids ride their horses. And that's why they stop and let them pet the horses, because they understand that we are a community, all of us, riders and non-riders. One of the hardest working people at that barn does not have a horse and does not ride. Butchie is one of the hardest working people, that man at that barn. And you probably never see him on a horse, but he is an integral part of the Fletcher Street community. And, we're not looking to replace or anything like that. We just want to, continue and establish something permanent that everyone can always have and be a part of.
Well, Ricky, behind the scenes, while you were making this film, they were planning to build, if somebody went to Fletcher Street now, it would not look the way it did in the film, correct?
No.
How did you maneuver with the city? You had a deadline where this film had to be made, or they wouldn't have any grazing area to show, correct?
And we barely got it in. A lot of that I have to give credit to a gentleman named Ryan Stack, who is on the board of Pura and has been a part of this process with us for years. He's a developer in the city, and he helped us navigate relationships with council members and establish communication, because Eric had the foresight then and knew that this time was coming 4 years ago. And so we established communication and made the city even aware that Fletcher Street was there. I'm really happy to see all these organizations benefit from this film, because without it, this would have been swept under the rug as it has for the last 100 years. She talks about 9th and Tioga, the White House, 32nd Street, all these communities were shut down and no one even knew they were there. But yeah, it was, we told the city, we're not here to picket and stop what you're doing. We understand it's a more nuanced discussion, even gentrification, but we really want to be able to tell this story, and can you help us? So, thankfully we got to, and now it's this beautiful time capsule, because if you go down there now, it's all construction and dug up.
Well, we have some questions. From Esma, I love that this is a coming-of-age film set among characters we haven't often met. Did Ivannah feel that this was the first time she saw people like her on screen? Did the other cast members feel that way?
So me personally, I will say 100%. If you look for a movie that includes Black cowgirls, you will find Gang of Roses. It is really old movie. And it has Lisa Leslie in it. Not Lisa Leslie, Lisa Ray. And she's beautiful and does a great job, but that's literally the only movie I've ever seen in my entire Google searching, YouTube searching, everything. That's the only movie you'll see with Black cowgirls. And so that was part of why I was also so excited for this, because there's so many, women that I know that this film represents and brings light to, and so many little girls that need to see this.
Well, Darlene Shock is asking, I think this is for Ricky, how receptive were the Cowboys when you first approached them? Were they flattered or skeptical when you told them your idea? I'm always interested in how you find trust in a community that's not yours.
Yeah. I think that I'm sure there are different people I know for sure were more or less comfortable with my presence in the beginning. Something that I think was really divine about meeting Eric is that he got to learn about me in court when I was speaking about my company. And, he went out of his way to do research about me. So I think whenever you're trying to bridge relationships with a community that's not your own, which is going to happen a lot in my career, is I think you have to be able to lead with vulnerability and honesty. One of the first conversations I had, about a dozen of the community from Fletcher Street sat in our office, and Eric was saying, I want to make a film with this guy. And they're all looking at me like, why him? And, we watched the short film that I had made, which proved to them that I could tell a true Philly story. And, they knew most of the cast members in there because North Philly isn't that big of a community. So that was like a fun hollering at, oh, I know that guy. I grew up with that guy.
The Cage, correct?
Yeah, The Cage is the short.
And that's on your website if people want to see it.
Correct? Yeah, it's on our website.
Right.
And so that was a good building block. And, I said outright, listen, I think this can make a beautiful story from what Eric has shared with me. I know I have skills as a director and a writer, but I did not grow up as a black cowboy, clearly. So if you don't tell this story with me, I can't do it. And so if you don't want to do it, we don't have to. This is truly like an invitation for us to collaborate together. And then it was just a slow process. Like Eric always encouraged me, you got to just be around a lot. This film needs to be for everyone. I want everyone's voice in it so that this film can truly represent the large community, not just one person or this person. It's for everyone. And so I did. I spent a lot of time just meeting people, which for me is actually one of the best parts of the process. Like, went to 3 years worth of barbecues that are in the film there. I mean, that alone is like one of the best. That was like the craziest day of filming. I actually had the camera on my shoulder and was dancing, and I was like, but experiencing those things was really special to me. And he always told me never bring a camera, because everyone else just comes down to their cameras and just wants to pick off shots. Right. So obviously it's so beautiful down there and amazing. But yeah, I don't think for like a year and a half, I never brought a camera or pulled out my phone until one day he wanted to send pictures to his brother who was locked up. And he's like, can you bring your camera? I'm going to get all my buddies. And that was the first time I started taking shots. Actually, the photo that we use at the end of the film to honor him was like one of the first pictures I ever took down at Fletcher Street. Oh.
Somebody's asking, how did you get that horse to just hang out in those people's house? And I also would like to, I read a story about this, but would you like to talk about what it takes to get a horse in a row house so that people won't think it's easy?
It's not easy. This is another good, this gentleman, Ryan Spack's getting a lot of airtime here. It was really, so he's a developer, and he was on a scout with us because he actually helped us source homes that were empty. So this house, when we first found it, was completely empty. So huge props to my art department. They made it look like that. That was actually the first house that we scouted, and I remember thinking, this is it. It's like exactly how I imagined. There's so much beautiful color and texture, and the mirror was on the wall. But Ryan didn't know that. Maybe he hadn't read the script or whatever, but I was like, the horse will go over here. And he's like, whoa. He was like, wait a second. You guys are going to bring a horse in here, first of all. And then there's going to be how many people and how much crew and how much. I'm like, yeah, that's what's in the script. And so he actually helped us work with an engineer, and we like re-supported the house underneath with all these beams and stuff, and took like weeks of work and, all kinds of stuff to make sure. And then we had to get a ramp on a certain angle, working with the trainers. This company LTD had these beautiful horses that were
awesome.
They were like,
they were awesome. Christine,
are you saying they're better than Philadelphia horses?
No, but they're more behaved.
They were. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Christine, I think her name was Pitcairn, and Ryan Patterson from LTD Animals. They're some awesome trainers, man. Because those horses, I mean, they hit their mark more than I did. Like they were professionals, those animals.
And they weren't going into that house until it was properly supported.
Yeah. Right.
And not to mention Idris Elba, who it would be bad to lose.
Yeah, don't want him falling through the floor.
So, well, yeah, it was just. Oh, so we've already discussed. Somebody wanted to know how they can support the Fletcher Street Riders, and I think we've gone over that. Somebody's asking. Sarah Casey's asking, does the stables need volunteers?
So once Pura breaks ground, we will definitely need volunteers. I'm sorry, breaks ground is the wrong word because the building is already there. Once Pura opens its doors, we will definitely need volunteers. Yes. And I'm going to keep, my Instagram is going to keep everyone updated about Pura. We also have our own Instagram, the Philadelphia Urban Riding Academy, so you can always keep up with what's going on there.
And your website, I think, is thepura.org.
That's correct.
Right. Ricky, by the way, in all these years of going to barbecues and stuff, were you put on the back of a horse at any point?
Oh yeah, dude. The first time that I've ever been on a horse was at Fletcher Street, and I remember Eric again. God, I miss him every time I talk about him. But he was like, when you go down there, you have to prove that you're going to stay down there. You got to get on a horse. And he tells me, and if it throws you off the horse, you got to prove that you're going to stay down there. You got to get back up on the horse. So this is his pep talk to me. So then I get down there, and then it's Mill, who's like, here, jump up on, what was it, Big Mama. And she was huge. And we're not in the field. We're actually in the middle of the street. And I'm like, well, why don't we go where that nice soft mud is over there? And he's like, no, you got to get up here. Don't worry, it's going to be fine. I'm like, you told me if I get thrown off the horse, I have to get back on. We're like, there's cement and cars everywhere. And he's like, just get up. He's like, if you keep talking, everyone's going to know you're not the real deal. So I got up there, and Mill, of course, doesn't even have a rope. He's like, oh, she'll follow me. So I'm literally just like hanging on. Like, I probably looked ridiculous, just walking down the middle of the street. And that was my first ride. And after that, I would get up on horses at the barbecues, and it was a lot of fun. My last day of directing, do you remember that, Mercedes? I directed from a horse.
Yes.
How do you do that?
It was like William Wallace style. I was like going back and forth. It was a real power move.
Let's see. Just want to make sure there's anything. Well, Mercedes, what is it about Philly that makes the horse culture here so special? I know a few other cities have black cowboys, but we get discovered every few years for having black cowboys.
You know what? I think that it's just because it's the city. Philadelphia is really city, and it's known for a lot of things, but you would not think of stables and places to keep horses and places to ride. And I think that is part of what makes it so special, is that our community is so tight knit. Like, literally, if you know me, if you've ever known me, like since I was a child, you would say she rides horses. Like anybody in the tight knit, not just the Fletcher Street community, but all of the barns, like everyone just kind of knows of everyone, because that it's just not a lot of places to go. And I think that's part of our charm, is that it's really the city of brotherly love. We're willing to pull together and help each other out. Fletcher Street runs out of hay, hey, dang, let me go run over here and call Belmont, see if they can give me a couple bales till Friday when we can get our delivery. Or, just things like that. It's all about working together. It's all about the community. And, again, I just want to reiterate, that's what we're trying to do. We just want to make sure that never leaves.
Last week when I was reporting the story about the two different GoFundMes, the one thing that quickly became evident is you all know each other.
Yes.
That it's not, that this isn't too strange, a bunch of strangers. It's just, and it looks like there'll probably be enough people wanting to help both. to go around. So
just different programs. And you know what, honestly, we at Pure are all about the community. I don't really know much about their program, but I would just hope that they're about the community as well. And that, you know, we just all continue working together and making sure that this tradition just stays here.
Well, thank you both so much. This has been really interesting. I love the movie. It's for people who are joined us very late. We're talking about Concrete Cowboy, and it's still on Netflix, and it's still trending on Netflix.
It'll be on Netflix forever. So
yep. Well, that's the other thing, is it never goes away.
Never going anywhere.
Right. Well, thank you both very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I thank everyone who's watching.
Everyone.